You're sitting in a room full of people you're supposed to love. The lights are warm, the music is familiar, there's laughter somewhere in the background. The air smells like cinnamon and pine, comfort, tradition, memory. Everything about the moment suggests safety, belonging, togetherness. And yet inside you there's nothing. Not sadness, not grief, not even anxiety. Just emptiness. A quiet, expansive absence that doesn't announce itself loudly enough to justify concern, but deep enough to make you feel unreal. You're smiling at the right moments, you're responding when spoken to, you're participating in the rituals, you look fine, you sound fine. But you feel like you're watching your life from the outside. This is the part no one prepares you for. Because emptiness is harder to explain than pain. Pain has shape, pain demands attention. Emptiness is smooth, silent, and socially invisible. And Christmas is uniquely cruel to this experience. Because Christmas doesn't just celebrate joy, it expects it. It doesn't just encourage connection, it assumes it. The season carries an unspoken message. If you're surrounded by people, you should feel full. So when you don't, the conclusion feels obvious. Something must be wrong with you. Here's the paradox at the center of this experience. The very behaviors that once kept you safe, being agreeable, emotionally quiet, adaptable, low maintenance, are the same behaviors now preventing you from feeling alive. You learned how to belong by shrinking yourself. And now, surrounded by people, you feel empty precisely because you are there. Christmas didn't create this emptiness. It revealed it. Let's be clear about something. This emptiness is not laziness. It's not ingratitude, and it's not a personal failure. It is a psychological pattern. At its core, this experience comes from performative belonging, a survival strategy where connection is maintained not through authenticity, but through emotional self-erasure. This pattern almost always begins early. When a child learns, explicitly or subtly, that their emotions are inconvenient, overwhelming, or destabilizing to others, the nervous system adapts. The child doesn't stop needing connection. Instead, they become hypertuned to the emotional environment. This is where hypervigilance develops. Hypervigilance isn't just anxiety, it's a constant scanning of the room. Who's comfortable? Who's upset? What version of me will keep this stable? The child learns to regulate others instead of themselves. Over time, this leads to emotional suppression, not as repression but as strategy. Feelings still exist, but they are quietly managed, softened, delayed, or hidden. Neurologically, this changes the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection and internal narrative. Instead of asking, "What do I feel? What do I want?" the mind defaults to, "What's expected of me? How do I maintain harmony?" Add to this avoidant attachment and the pattern deepens. Avoidant attachment doesn't mean you don't want closeness. It means closeness once came with conditions. Love was available, but only if you were calm. Accepted, but only if you were easy. Included, but only if you didn't need too much. So the nervous system learned. Connection is safest when I take up less emotional space. Christmas disrupts this illusion. Because it demands emotional presence, warmth, openness, shared meaning, things that cannot be performed indefinitely. And your body knows the difference between acting connected and being connected. There's a quiet grief attached to this pattern. It's not the grief of losing someone. It's the grief of losing yourself slowly, without ceremony. You didn't collapse. Nothing dramatic happened. You just adapted. Day by day. Moment by moment. You became easier, quieter, more contained. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But for you, the terror was different. What if being yourself meant losing connection? So you made a trade, one you didn't know you were making at the time. Authenticity for belonging. Expression for acceptance. Truth for harmony. And it worked. People liked you, trusted you, felt safe around you. But the cost was internal. You became emotionally competent but internally distant. Empathetic but disconnected from your own needs. Reliable but rarely relaxed. The core fear driving this pattern is not abandonment. It's exposure. The fear that if you stop managing yourself, if you let emotions move freely, you will become too much. So even joy becomes dangerous. Joy leads to feeling. Feeling leads to expression. Expression leads to vulnerability. And vulnerability once felt unsafe. Christmas magnifies this pain because it asks for collective emotion, public warmth, shared presence. You don't know how to do that without disappearing. So you feel empty not because you lack emotion, but because you learned to mute it. This emptiness is grief. Grief for the self that never got to fully arrive. This doesn't stay in childhood. It becomes your personality until you realize it isn't. You might feel detached during celebrations even when nothing is wrong. Struggle to identify what you actually want in relationships. Be emotionally available to everyone except yourself. Overfunction at work, confusing usefulness with worth. Avoid asking for help until exhaustion forces it. Feel relief when plans are canceled, followed by guilt. Experience numbness instead of sadness. Feel invisible even when you're included. These are not flaws. They are coping strategies. You didn't become distant because you don't care. You became distant because caring once required self-abandonment. Healing begins with witnessing, not fixing. Witnessing means stopping the internal gaslighting. It means saying, "Of course I feel empty, this pattern makes sense." Unlearning doesn't require dramatic change. It starts with noticing. When am I performing instead of feeling? When am I managing instead of participating? When am I present physically but absent emotionally? Christmas can become a mirror, not an accusation. Healing does not mean suddenly loving Christmas. It means reclaiming yourself within it. This is where inner child reparenting begins, learning to offer yourself the permission you never had. Permission to be quiet. Permission to feel awkward. Permission to not perform joy on command. This is where shadow work matters, meeting the parts of you that learn to hide and saying, "You don't have to disappear anymore." And most importantly, healing requires choosing softness. Softness toward your nervous system. Softness toward your limits. Softness toward the version of you that survived by adapting. You are not broken. You are intelligent, resourceful, responsive. The goal is not to be fixed. The goal is to become whole. Wholeness means existing without auditioning for belonging. It means your presence is enough even when it's quiet. Even when it's complicated. Even when it doesn't look like holiday joy. Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have." Healing is remembering something else. The future where you no longer disappear to be loved. If this video resonated, it's because this story lives in you. And if you share it, it's because others are sitting at tables right now, feeling the same emptiness, believing they're alone. They're not, and neither are you.